Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology and how it reflects the world environment we're in right now, and also to give you predictions for the upcoming week and analyses based on requests I've received. Now, I did receive some comments last week about articulation and the signal breaking in and out. I actually found I had this microphone buried under papers. So let me know if this makes a difference. It was it's actually supposed to be a good quality lavalier mic stereo, and so it should come up better. If it doesn't, just let me know, and I'll see what else I can do. Okay. But like I said, I had, as as one does, one gets messy on one's desk, and that happened to me. So I had a bunch of papers and CDs and other stuff on the desk. So I do music criticism part-time, very, very part-time. So I had a bunch of CDs I was going to look at and see if I could review. And but that didn't happen. And I also want to dedicate the show to we lost another cat yesterday. This cat's name was actually Gary in an act of self-indulgence. I named one of my cats after myself. I found for some peculiar reason that when I name cats after family members, they pass away quickly, or the cats pass away. This one lasted. He had a serious tumor on his back. It was diagnosed about maybe about a year and a half ago. And he was moving up until he was moving with the help of steroid shots. They couldn't operate. He was moving with the help of steroid shots for about a year and a half. And about 2 weeks ago, the steroid shots started having no effect. So he just passed away yesterday afternoon. So this one's for you, Gary. You're a good cat. Um, the excuse me, I just did a little bit. I just need a moment. Sorry, folks. Okay, so I'm back, and so I've been asked to look at Keir Starmer's chart or Keir Starmer's chart this week. I don't want to risk any international incidents or any censorship problems in UK, so I'm going to look at this very carefully and just give you my analysis of why he's been running into so many problems over the past couple of years. And it's fairly obvious. Also, I'm going to look at the week in review. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening in the United States chart with the Epstein files and with other things that are going on. And and also talk maybe a little bit about the world situation, but I'll do it from the transit chart, which we'll look at first. Okay, so let's go here, and I'll refer to other charts I won't show you, at least not today, just in the interest of time. So if you do want to contact me for a reading or for lessons, my phone number is 508 525 0001. Again, that's 508 525 0001. The email address is Gary Gomes G So it's Gary, GaryGomes, the letter G at gmail.com. So it's Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. Okay. So um, let's look at at the star. I'm gonna look at the star chart first, I think. Just because I can explain a little bit about how he operates and also, at least for my analysis, how he operates and how he and really what's been giving him because England has had, I have family in England. England has had major problems over the past couple of years. For those of you in the United States who don't follow England, I do just because I have a family interest over there. And I'm English. My mother was English, as I've said before. My mother was from Liverpool. And so just basically, since he took office, he's really had, so he's been prime minister since 2024. That was when, so we don't have an actual birth time for Prime Minister Starmer. So essentially, I'm using the rising sign or the sun sign as the surrogate rising sign. But really speaking, we could look at pretty much any sign and draw certain things. So certain planets have attributes connected to them. And so let's say if I want to look at his love life, I might want to look at Venus. If I want to look at his mind, I might want to look at the moon. If I want to look at his leadership, I might want to look at the sun. The sun. And if I want to look at his judgment, might want to look at Jupiter. If I want to look at his problems or adversaries, I might want to look at Saturn or Mars, let's say. And this guy, you'll notice this guy has a lot of planets surrounding his sun. Okay, so that's something that usually indicates a certain degree of prominence or um, notice in a chart. So the person will definitely be noticed. Um, and it can indicate a certain amount of egocentrality, and by egocentrality, I don't mean egotism. It's just you have to have a certain amount of egocentrality or egotism, if I want to get a little bit, to run for political office. You have to think you can handle the job better than anybody else can. Otherwise, you're going to support somebody else, right? So, so ego is not a problem in this particular field. It's rarely you see a very self-effacing leader come up in the world. I have seen almost none in my entire lifetime. And the ones who are don't last very long, if I'm quite truthful. So Prime Minister Starmer, the most important thing I can look at is basically uh, roughly between early 2024 and roughly around mid 2025, Prime Minister Starmer had um, K2 right over his moon sign, and Saturn entered is in opposition to his moon sign right now. It's going retrograde, so that's interesting, but this can indicate a connection with the people, the K2 going over the moon sign. So that's why he got elected. However, on the opposite side, it can mean he will introduce some unpopular public policies. Okay, so K2 with the moon is kind of an eccentric position. So essentially, he'll do what he thinks is right without regard for greater public opinion. Okay, so that's really what's been causing a lot of the issues, at least in the chart. So I'm not talking about his personality. He's got a Mars Mercury aspect, which indicates a person that can dissemble the truth or make things up pretty easily. It's a relatively common combination. You'll find it a lot in politicians and lawyers. Starmer's also a lawyer. He's a barrister. And you'll also find it uh, in actors, politicians, lawyers, pretty much anyone who has to um, think quickly on their feet and sometimes pretend to be something they aren't. Okay, so this indicates a quick mind. Mars is in Gemini, which is Mercury's sign, so it gives a very quick thinking ability. Mars aspects Mercury. Mercury's exalted. He's a really smart guy. Okay, so give credit where credit is due. And Venus is in its own sign, which is very good for um, compromise and for dealing with the public and for being well liked. Okay, so these are the positives in the chart. The negatives are that he has Rahu in Cancer. And while we don't know which house this actually sits in his birth chart, it can indicate sudden losses or sudden turnarounds or setbacks. The reason for that is because Rahu tends to be rather grabby, but when it grabs something, it can't hold on to it. So you saw the same thing in Donald Trump's chart, especially during his first term, where um, he surprised people by winning, actually winning, but he couldn't hold on to it. He couldn't hold on to it for a second term in a row. He came back during his Jupiter Mahadasha. So let's get back to Mr. Starmer's chart, the Prime Minister Starmer's chart. He's also got Saturn aspecting that Rahu and K2 afflicting Saturn. Now, what does K2 afflicting Saturn mean? Well, K2, Saturn is in its own sign, so his chart's actually a pretty strong chart. If you have three planets in their own signs, that's considered of actually four planets. Sun is in its own sign, Mercury is in its own sign, Venus is in its own sign, and Saturn is in its own sign. So this guy has um, a lot of great personality combinations. Okay, so what the Hindus call, so he has a prominent Mercury, so he's clever. That's afflicted by Mars somewhat, though, so that's not going to give like the greatest amount of trust. Again, like I said, he's a politician. This is not necessarily a negative for a politician to have. He has Venus in its own sign. It's a great combination for being intelligent, for being artistic, for being persuasive. Okay. Venus is, like Jupiter, a diplomatic planet. It's also a teaching planet. Saturn's in its own sign. There's a certain amount of stubbornness there. And depending on what his rising sign is, that could create a Raj Yoga in his chart, or Saturn aspecting Rahu could. But we're not sure what his actual rising sign is. So we have to be a little bit careful about that. Jupiter in Aquarius, he's going to have relatively unconventional or progressive beliefs. Jupiter is in Satabhishak Nakshatra. Not really the best nakshatra for holding on to power, if I'm quite honest, and I can address through personal experience. Satabhishak Nakshatra is a nakshatra connected with the deposed king of heaven. Okay, so Varuna is the ruler of that nakshatra. He was overthrown by Indra, and his Venus is in Chitra, which indicates a building aspect to Venus, not necessarily a maintenance aspect to Venus. So there will be indications because of this K2 passing over. So I'm gonna jump ahead. K2 passing over the moon, K2 aspect, K2 passing over Mercury and Moon over the past year, institution of some unpopular policies. Okay, so the public feels hurt or damaged by that, or large chunks of the public do. K2 passing over the Sun, there'll be challenges to his authority later this year. I think one of the things you should keep in mind is this really won't come to um, come full tilt until sometime in mid 2026. But I'm not sure if you'll see a call for elections next year. I have to look at England's map based upon his map. He's in a Mercury Mahadasha right now. Again, this is not accurate. This is just an estimate. But I would be willing to bet he's in a Mercury Mahadasha. And out of a K2 Mahadasha, which again can explain that sudden rise to power. K2 with Saturn does tend to, it's a combination. I've seen elevate previously obscure people to, and I'm not saying that Starmer was obscure in the UK, but just, you know, not necessarily well known, but quiet people to positions of power. The Mercury Mahadasha is Mercury's, I always hate to say this because his Mercury is strong, but Mercury's kind of a treacherous planet. That's been my experience. And right now, Saturn is aspecting Mercury. So Mercury isn't really treacherous, it's unstable. So by the end of the year, Mars will have aspected Mercury or will be in the same sign as Mercury and the Moon. And if we're going a little bit and aspected by Saturn, so there should be some crisis in his administration towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, beginning of 2026. Um, and so he's in a Mercury subperiod. Mercury is, see now, yeah, so some kind of attack on him or some kind of attack on his leadership between November 24th and January 13th. And maybe by June of next year, a call for new elections or something like that. That's a little bit, I feel a little bit uncomfortable making that particular prediction, mainly because I'm not sure about the timing of these particular Mahadashas. But basically, that's the best I can do right now. But I think overall, he's going to have more sympathy for strangers or the poor or the downtrodden more so than with the established um, people in England with the established. So that's, I think, in part why he's been um, sympathetic uh, to the immigrant population coming in. But I also think that just given the fact that his son will be really strongly afflicted by K2 next year, you're going to see some calls for his resignation. Um, this could be wildly off, but that's what I'm seeing. And we're really talking about the middle of next year for being the most likely time. He may weather those, he may just ride them out. Uh, And I think that, and again, if I'm looking at this chart, this isn't, if I give him this Leo rising, this isn't radically different from Donald Trump's actual verified chart. So you'll see Donald Trump in a lot of trouble next year as well. But again, it's not, this is not an accurate birth chart. This is an approximation of a birth chart. So I have to be careful about that. Now let me scoot over to um, the main birth chart. I'm checking something right now. Okay, let's go over to the birth chart I usually use. Broadcasts. And this is for when I started the program just before I came on. I pulled up this particular chart. We have Moon Mars and K2 in the 12th house. The first house Lord is um, Virgo. So I'm being critical of myself. That's, sort of like what's in the air right now. Trying not to be so judgmental of different individuals. Uh, but we have a Venus Jupiter conjunction right now, which is sort of like it's an interesting combination, isn't it? Because um, whenever I've seen Venus and Jupiter come together, especially in charts, um, so Venus and Jupiter dashas and bhukti. So dashas are the planetary periods, and um, the sub periods or antardashas, they're also called. So so over here, this is a dasha, and this is a bhukti. Okay, so these are like cycles that come out from where the moon is calculated in the chart. And so this is a major planetary subperiod we're in because this point in space is in Purva Falguni, which is a Venus um, nakshatra or Venus nakshatra under the Vimshotri Mahadash, a way of timing things. And the sun is the sub period that we're in. So it goes in a fixed cycle of K2, or the normal cycle is K2 Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and then back to K2 again. So, so there are 9 major planetary periods you can have in Vimshotri, or the 120-year Mahadasha system. And in this chart, we're in a Venus subperiod, which is this moon is located in the 12th house. So it can indicate some financial losses or maybe some blocks because the moon is with K2. Mars is with K2. Now we're finally out of what's called the Kala Sarpa Yoga, or the Kala Amrita Yoga more properly in this particular case. So the Kala Sarpa Yoga is essentially when all planets are hemmed in between Rahu and Ketu. Okay, so it's hemmed in between this large serpentine being, and all the planets suffer during that particular time because they're swallowed. Okay, so these are the eclipse points in the chart. Mars has made its way out, so you're seeing a lot of action around the world in terms of people trying to get things done, people trying to move forward and get tasks, especially mechanical or tasks requiring effort, done and completed. And so this can cause blockages to a lot of simple things, like anything from like car repairs to getting appliances delivered properly, to having health issues resolved either one way or the other. and also towards having um, and also towards moving forward in terms of uh, gains. Now, what that means in terms of economics is this is at least the end of the tariff period. So tariff negotiations are still ongoing, but a lot of them have been settled already. So we'll finally be able to see what the results of the tariffs will actually be. The other thing is we have the K2 with Mars. So in terms of political scandals, the Epstein case with Donald Trump is coming up very strongly, is casting a bad light on Donald Trump. It probably will be for the next year or year and a half or so, uh, just because of that K2 in the first house. He has Mars in the first house as well, so this is his rising sign. So that again creates a Raj Yoga. It'll move to his second house. It'll move to Jupiter's sign, his stationary direct Jupiter. And that will allow him, I think, legally to address the situation. That's only a couple of days away. Around August 1st, Mars changes signs. A little bit before that, to be honest with you. And the moon moves into the first house pretty much tomorrow. Okay. So I think a lot of this stuff, I'm not saying this stuff is going to go away, but also I think one of the things that happens is when you have these kinds of combinations like K2 in this sign, and let's say Rahu in the seventh house or Rahu in Aquarius, you'll also see past crimes or issues renewed again. Okay, so that's also why it's not. Um, I'm not naive enough to think it's coincidental that it's coming up at the same time as the Epstein cases are, but that's also why you're seeing a lot of these cases coming up with former President Obama. Obama is he served out his terms in office. He's a deposed king. And so you'll see a lot of these combinations starting to come up, and you'll see reputations of um, Trump's enemies also smirched over the next year and a half. The other thing is, at least from, so I was going to get back to Venus and Jupiter. Venus and Jupiter have this weird effect that they cause deaths. So Venus-Jupiter conjunctions or Venus-Jupiter subperiods in particular are really dangerous subperiods. So they're both benefic planets, and I can hear a lot of my my Vedic friends saying, but Venus and Jupiter are good planets. Yeah, but Jupiter doesn't like Venus. Venus is neutral to Jupiter, but Jupiter does not like Venus, period. Even though Venus is exalted in Pisces, Jupiter really doesn't like Venus. And a lot of that is, according to the mythology, there's a long-standing animosity between the two. Venus helped the moon steal Jupiter's wife. Uh, Venus became the teacher of the Asuras, who were enemies of the Devas, because he knew he couldn't become the Deva guru uh, or the guru of the establishment because Jupiter was born into that family. It's the Brahminical tradition, so the Brahmin caste essentially is um, a genetic line. It's not something that people gain through merit. They gain it through birth, and that birth is the merit. So Venus and Jupiter. although they can actually do some nice things in terms of create opening up opportunities. People start to get enthusiastic. People start to want to learn more things, and especially, and also there'll be a lot of relationship enthusiasm. Um, Venus and Jupiter tend to put up, tend to create situations in which a person may overindulge or take unnecessary risks, mainly because they feel kind of invulnerable. They feel kind of optimistic, and it can free up some people as well. So there is a kind of a weird phenomenon that happens, and the death is actually a form. A friend of mine who was a well-known Vedic astrologer, I won't say his name, uh, told me when a friend of mine passed away a couple of years ago, well, he's freed from this illusion. And that's true, but it doesn't help when it helps in terms of understanding what death is. So death is essentially you're escaping from Maya, you're escaping from the illusion of that this life is um, the reality, that this life is all there is. But it still leaves pain to those left behind. It still leaves, um, so in that way, you can see how this can be a benefic activity on between Venus and Jupiter, but it's a rather jarring one. And I think so, at least from this. So this doesn't mean a lot of people are going to die during the Venus Jupiter conjunction. Okay, so please don't take it that way. Um, the Mars Saturn aspect was actually far more dangerous, and that'll continue for another couple of months. Okay, so in terms of accidents, keep on. So we saw there was a series of stabbings in a mall in Walmart. In the I think it was in I want to say it was in Michigan, I think. And so you're going to see incidents like that continue to happen, if I'm quite honest with you. So, and you will still start to see, with Mars entering Virgo, you're going to see more earthquakes and more bad storm fronts, more flooding with Saturn and Pisces, more potential for earthquakes over the next couple of months. But also because K2 is passing through um, Leo, you will see more leaders deposed. There was just, um, I can't remember the country, unfortunately, but the entire government of the country was just thrown out of office. Was it Singapore? I think. And so you're going to see more actions like that over the next few months, over the next couple of years. Okay. So leaders who thought they were untouchable will tend to be touchable. They'll tend to be vulnerable. This accounts for almost everybody. This is an extreme time of rebellion. Okay, so you're going to see. Um, so we're seeing essentially in the United States, at least, we're seeing uh, sort of like a small civil war happening within the Democratic Party, the start of one within the Republican Party, although it's not quite as pronounced. And also, you're seeing a lot of unusual candidates, like Nigel Farage's party in the UK, essentially becoming the most popular party right now. It's only by a few percentage points, but it's still kind of unprecedented because they had a three-party system actually for a long time, but the liberals never really gained that much, gained as much popularity as um, as Farage's party is doing right now. So So I think that one of the things you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of governmental disruption over the next uh, 12 to 18 months. It's just a lot of it. Um, and the other thing is, in terms of pricing for items like housing will continue to go up over the next couple of months. Um, you will probably see a drop in interest rates. I'm imagining around November. I was thinking it might come a little bit before then, but maybe around November. And also, excuse me, also, uh, I think you're also going to see a lot of political scandals, mainly because Rahu is in. It's right now. The United States is in what's called a 7.5 year period of Saturn, where it just sort of like reevaluates things and goes through a lot of trauma. But Rahu is also over the US moon right now, or close to it. So that causes a lot of rebellious impulses in the country. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of mass demonstrations next summertime as well as right now. And a lot of that is being precipitated by um, both actions that that the Trump administration is taking and actions that the people opposed to the Trump administration are taking. So you're going to see a lot of mudslinging over the next year and a half, a lot. Um, in terms of the economy to me looks stable, at least over the next month or so. A little bit rocky, um, maybe in terms of fuel prices and also in terms um, of um, what I would call heavy goods like cars and things like that over the next couple of months. That'll stabilize. That'll settle down around December, I think, November or December. And the other thing is we have an eclipse coming in September. So I'll talk about that in more detail. And it's coming in these two signs. So there's an eclipse in the US's chart. It'll affect the United States chart a great deal. And if the United States sneezes, the rest of the world, if the United States gets a cold, the rest of the world gets pneumonia. Now that's maybe a little bit unfair because the United States is about a quarter of the world economy. Um, Europe's about another quarter of the world's economy, but Europe and the United States are both facing some challenges. If I'm looking, um, Europe's got more to lose right now than the United States does. To be, and again, that's not just because I'm in the United States. That's because of the charts I've looked at. China is just starting to come out of its slump, but it's on precarious footing. So the next important block is China, and China is not really in good shape. A lot of the nations around China that deal with China will also be affected by that, and a lot of the world economy. So a lot of the world economy is so we don't live in an isolated economy anymore. So if one country sneezes, we all catch the bug, right? But I'm not seeing an economic catastrophe really until around uh, probably around 20, or I'm not seeing anything like an economic recession until around 2029, at the earliest 2030, more likely. And even that, I don't think will be very long lived, if I'm quite honest. So um, I- I'm not underplaying the significance of the eclipses in the chart that are coming up in these particular two signs in September. But I've also been around long enough that I don't take I think I mentioned this a few times to you folks, but there's a phenomenon in economics called the fallacy of composition, and it exists in other disciplines as well. And there's a tendency to project what you see in your immediate environment and say it's happening everywhere. So if you're in, let's say, a country which is, or you're in a city, let's say, even for that matter, or you know some friends who lost their jobs, or you've even lost your job, there's a tendency to say, "Oh my God, we're in a depression, we're collapsing." Even in the worst depressions I've experienced, even in the worst recessions I've experienced, and this is going back through 74, early 80s, 1988. Uh, I'm sorry, uh, yeah, it was 1988. Um, and 1988, 89, and going into the conditions to set up the Clinton presidency, and 2000, 2000 and 2007, there were always jobs you could find. They may not be the best jobs, but there are always jobs you could find. Okay? So you had to be willing to do things that weren't necessarily in your particular field. And that caused some pain. But even in the worst recessions, like I said, even in the worst economic situations I've seen, there were always ways to make ends meet. And so, and, and keep something in mind. I live in an area of the state of Massachusetts, which was known for high unemployment. And so there are always ways to make a living or to, so some not so comfortable, but there's always a way to do it. So again, this isn't me being preachy. This isn't me saying, "Oh God, you gotta pull yourself up by the bootstraps." But God, there's always something to do out there. Okay. So, so we're not talking anything Great Depression level for decades. Okay. So let's go ahead to um, the chart for individuals, uh, at least happening right, at least happening right now. And let's look at Aries. Aries has Mars in the fifth house, along with Moon and Ketu, so that can give some problems with children. They'll start to pass a little bit. Children will still have problems when Mars goes into um, Virgo, but I think you'll find them a little bit more easy to address. There'll at least be a way to cleanse the child or get, so the child will probably be a little bit difficult to deal with for another year or so, or a little bit moody, but maybe there'll at least be some treatment. Possibly the child won't be fighting back quite so much. And in terms of your own life, you'll have a fight on your hands over the next couple of months, but you'll be able to recover within quickly. And this is in the third house. So this sign is going to be a little bit more optimistic, have a little bit more faith. Sun and Mercury are in the fourth house. This is generally a good combination for taking care of past duties which have been ignored around the house. Uh, Venus, Mars. Okay, so we already spoken about that house. That's fifth house. Rahu's in the 11th house, so you have to watch out for friends. Both Libra and Aries have to watch out for their friends, or their friends will be more critical or a little bit more deceptive than normally. And Saturn's in the 12th house, so it's an expensive time for Aries, but that'll pass a little bit um, after Saturn turns direct in a few months. So for Taurus, Taurus has it's a good time for creativity for Aries. So I see a Moon Mars conjunction in the fifth house. So good for creativity, good uh, for new lines of work. Taurus has um, the Lord of the first house is in the second house, so it's a good month for or a good week for accumulating money. And so along with Jupiter, there'll be a lot of more optimism for the sign, a lot more happiness for the sign. Sun is in the third house, a lot more courage, a lot more intelligence with Mercury there. Good time for deal making, but don't sign on the dotted line. Anybody, in terms of like finding sales and stuff like that, Mercury retrograde is a great time. We're going to have a Jupiter retrograde within about a week. I'll talk about that at the end of this. And I think I think one of the things about this particular chart is Mercury retrograde can present great deals. Just don't sign on the bottom line for at least another couple of weeks. Okay. Mars is in the fourth house. So again, some mechanical problems with cars, some mechanical problems at home. Those kinds of things are indicated by this particular pattern. Maybe some arguments or fights with spouses. Work life seems difficult to control, and Saturn in the 11th house. Again, you have to watch out for friends. They'll try to put you down or make you feel bad about yourself. Don't let that happen. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury is in the second house. Sun is in the second house, so it's a good time for this sign to be more optimistic, more happy. Things will start to go Gemini's way a lot more frequently. This is June 15th to July 15th for the sun sign. A lot of people out there have Gemini risings. The people I've been hearing from most are actually Gemini rising signs over the past few months. You know, so they've had a really difficult time of it. But basically, this Venus, so they've been very unhappy because of Venus being in the 12th house and aspected by Saturn. Venus is no longer aspected by Saturn. You can at least see a way clear to being freed. Romantic life becomes possible again, and happiness becomes possible again. Uh, and relationship life looks like it can be restored or uh, renewed, at least from this particular chart. Sun's in the second house, good for earning ability. Mercury's in the second house. You may have to redo some past work. Mars and K2 in the third house, a little bit difficult in terms of getting what you want. And again, there is a tendency towards depression between a Moon Mercury conjunction when a Moon Mercury conjunction occurs. But basically, this gives you a chance to clear out your emotions and to get rid of that depression. Let's see now. So you'll probably feel sad for about another day and that'll go away. Rahu is in the ninth house in this chart. Some potential opportunities for work life, but they'll demand a lot of effort on your part, and you'll have to go back and redo some projects. So I've been finding I've been having to do that myself. I'm not a Gemini rising, but I'm an air sign rising, and I've been asked to correct things more often than normal. So let's see now. For Cancer, Cancer has Sun and Mercury in the first house, retrograde Mercury. So a few expenses, but good saving potential for the sign. This is July 15th through August 15th, roughly. And Mars and K2. So again, there's a little bit of depression around family life, a little bit of disappointment. a little bit of disappointment about money. Rahu's in the eighth house in this chart. So again, there are some possibilities of gains, but they're a little bit hidden and a little bit frustrated. Saturn's in the ninth house. Good time for promotion, good time for increases in responsibility, undertaking increases in responsibility. And overall, this is not a bad sign placement. Venus and Jupiter are heading towards Cancer. Jupiter's heading towards its exalted position. That's overall going to be a good year for, that'll come next summertime, but that's going to be a good year for cancers. But overall, if Jupiter's in the 12th house, good for money, good for saving money, good for money coming in unexpectedly from unusual sources. K2's in the second house. Yes, along with the Lord of the 10th house, unusual promotion opportunities for this sign. But you have to not be afraid of them. Third house Lord is Mercury. Lord of the third is in the first and is the Lord of the 12th. So this tends to indicate desires may cost you some money. So be careful about spending in this chart, but don't be afraid to travel. For Saturn in the ninth house, we already spoken about that. Good for promotional opportunities for this sign. For Leo, now again, keep in mind Cancer will have some people who are a little bit jealous of it, a little bit. Relationship partners may be a little bit deceptive. So I'm saying this for all people who are um, Cancer rising or Cancer moon. But again, I don't think the deception is intentional. I think it's maybe they're not quite sure what they want, and I think it's more like um, they they want you to take risks a bit more. That's more what it looks like to me. Okay, so this can have a variety of effects. So one thing you learn about the planets after doing astrology, and you read books like the Uttara Kalamrita, is there's something like 90 assignations or significations for every planet and just as many for each house. So uh, this can be a lot of different things. Rahu is actually in its own sign, so that's actually a good quality for it to have. It supports the significations of Rahu. So if a person has ambitions, that's actually good. But again, like I said, um, it's not well thought out sometimes, unfortunately. For Leo, Leo has Moon, Mars, and K2 in the first house. That's um, a spoiled uh, nodal conjunction, nodal Raj Yoga. K2 and Rahu are lunar nodes. And so whenever the Lord of the fourth and the ninth house get together in another trine or angle, or um, it creates a Raj Yoga in Vedic astrology. So there are a variety of conditions under which this can happen, but this is a pretty strong one. So actually, this does indicate that Leos are going to continually get what they want. There won't be a lot of, just trying to think of the right word to use. There will be a lot of resistance. There will be a lot of pushback, but pretty much they'll get what they want. When Mars enters this sign, it's still not a bad conjunction. Mars and Jupiter are Raj Yoga Karaka planets for this particular sign. So again, for at least another 2 months. Um, Jupiter's at least another 6 months, actually, when I'm looking at the chart, because of where Jupiter is. You'll see that people with Leo risings or Leo suns basically able to do what they want. Um, the other thing is we have, so I haven't looked at the Neptune-Saturn conjunction. I almost never look at that because the potential for deception or misrepresentation is present by K2 being in the first house. So there are signs that people with this sun sign or this rising sign can be capable of deception and exposed to scandal, but it's never as long lasting as. And Neptune and Sun are right on top of each other. And Neptune's heading back towards Saturn, but it's not going to catch up, at least not right now, because Saturn moves faster than Neptune. Okay, but basically, if we, so that may be one of the first or last times you'll hear me talk about Neptune as a deceiving planet. It's really not considered deceiving, it's considered more scandalous or intoxicating. So it has traits connected with the lunar nodes, which is why I choose not to use it as long as I have the lunar nodes to explain the same thing. I've almost never, as a matter of fact, I'm going to underscore, never seen Neptune do something the lunar nodes have not accounted for. I will repeat, never. Okay, so that's why I'm sticking to that position. I'll look at it, I'll consider it, but I won't give it a lot of weight. It's one of nature's happy coincidences that we have Western astrology uncovering the same things as Eastern astrology, but with newer planets. So, um, so, and again, I know a lot of Indian astrologers use Neptune and Uranus. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying I think you have so many tools to work with within the traditional Vedic system that, um, and I understand what the outer planets do. I've studied Western astrology, but I just go like, well, it's it's there, but it's here also. Okay, so it's there, but it's in the traditional, the more traditional Vedic system as well. So you can use whatever tool makes you feel comfortable. Okay, enough about that. So we have the Moon Mars conjunction. Uh, so overall, looks like it won't be a bad time, at least over the next few months for Leo. Uh, Again, increasing scandals, increasing problems, increasing distrust because of K2 progressing through the sign. But again, nothing really to flip it over or kill or throw it out, given all other things being equal. Keeping in mind, it is a rather unstable period for governments, especially after December or so. And again, we'll see a lot of instability in September, so I'll talk about that a little bit next week. For Virgo, so we have I didn't finish off. Did I finish off for Leo? Good financial gains for Leo, some loss of respect, um, and Saturn's in the eighth house, so there will be a long-term effort against it, or long-term effort to upset the apple cart for Leo. Stubborn effort. So keep that in mind. But again, this isn't a bad week for Leo. For uh, Virgo, we have this is really September 15th to October 15th, and we have Moon, Mars, and K2 in the 12th house, so it can indicate some losses or some financial obligations connected with property. Um, Mercury's in the 11th house and also with debt. Mercury's in the 11th house, good for gains, good for financial gains, even gains from the government. Venus and Jupiter are in the 10th house, so it should be a good career time for this particular chart. Saturn's in the 7th house. Not a particularly good time for relationship life. There'll be a lot of stress on relationship life. That's is going to happen over the next couple of years. And even in terms of business partners will be difficult. For for Sri Lagna's in the 4th house, so some gains through property. Rahu's in the 6th house, some possible problems with illnesses or diseases, maybe intestinal issues. But basically, overall, this is a good chart. Um, Mercury retrograde in the 11th house, not so good. So there maybe have to be some um, redoing of work, similar to what we saw um, for some of the earlier signs, but that's going to afflict everybody. For in terms of wealth gain, it's a good time for Virgo rising. And let's see now what else do I want to look at for this chart. Relationship wise, if you get into a relationship and it's not the right person, you'll be stuck with that relationship for a long time. So probably not a good idea to get involved in a relationship. So, yeah, I know it's disappointing news for you, but I have to be honest with you. For Libra, Libra has um, this is October 15th through November 15th. The Lord of Libra is in the 9th house along with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is not a good planet for Libra rising. It's considered the worst possible planet, but it is still a luck-producing planet. And it's aspecting the 1st house. So this will make the sign rather lucky, financially lucky, although from unexpected sources. Career life will be strong, but there will be some repetition of work, as we said before. Uh, Strong desire for gain because of Sri Lagna being in the 3rd house, or for financial gain. Rahu is in the 5th house, so there'll be an increased level of creativity, unorthodox creativity in particular, hitting this sign, but also not quite sure what it wants in terms of happiness. And this is a kind of a dangerous time for Libra rising because there's a temptation to get involved with love affairs, especially short-term love affairs. So again, if you find yourself being attracted to people, especially people from other countries or other cultures, uh, pursue that slowly because there may be differences. It may just be the attraction of the unusual that's making you um, move in this particular direction. Saturn's in the 6th house. Luck is gained, education is gained through work, through competition. And it'll be tough until around November 25th. Then it'll be a little bit easier. Let's see now. Venus and Jupiter in the 9th house. Again, very good. Career life is a strong focus. Gains through property, unexpected gains through property and career, at least from this chart. So overall, not a bad chart for Libra rising involvements. Even things like running for political office might appeal to the sign at this particular time. But again, like I said, just make sure it's what you really want because you'll be able to achieve it, but you may find yourself really deciding later on, and I accomplished it, but this isn't really what I wanted at all. So at least from the chart, I think you'll start to see some changes or some shifts over the next few months. By November, you'll know whether or not that's the direction you really want to go in. Let's see now. By Let's go to Scorpio. Scorpio has no signs in the first house. Moon, Mars, K2. Uh, this is November 15th to December 15th. Moon, Mars, and K2 are in the 10th house. Some problem getting recognition in career, as we mentioned before. Also, Libra. Watch out for your friends. They'll be a little bit more critical or a little bit less forgiving than normal. Okay. Usually this sign can charm its way through a lot of things, but you'll be asked to prove yourself or to um, justify yourself more often over the next year or so. For Scorpio, let's go back to Scorpio. My apologies. For Scorpio, we have Moon Mars K2 conjunction happening in the 10th house. So some fear of lack of recognition in career. Um, you will be recognized in career. It's just you won't necessarily be um, immediately compensated for it. And Mercury's in the 9th house along with the sun. This actually gives good potential for financial gain. Venus and Jupiter in the 8th house. Unexpected windfalls or financial gains are due for this sign, especially from spouse. Rahu's in the 4th house in this sign, so there's going to be some dissatisfaction with where you live. You'll want to change locales. I would say to just make sure there are no problems with the new location. And Saturn's in the 5th. So again, this isn't a bad placement, but I think Saturn in the 5th house does tend to give more trouble with creative work than normal, but you'll be very productive. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Sri Lagna in the 1st house, so that indicates financial gain. That's why I'm not that worried about the United States. Over the next few months, this is the United States' rising sign. But let's look to the Sagittarians in particular. This is people born between December 15th and January 15th. And we have a Venus-Jupiter conjunction, so opportunities for relationship partners abound for this particular sign. And Sun and Mercury are in the 8th house, but you'll have to be careful about them in terms of what they expect from you or whether or not they have hidden motives. Better to stay out of a relationship for about another couple of months. Um, Saturn's Rahu's in the 3rd house for this sign, so there's new ambition for this sign. Wants to conquer the world, wants to do a lot of great things. Saturn's in the 4th house, difficult to stabilize home life or have a lot of a domestic tranquility in the home front. Let's see now. We have Sun and Mercury. We've already spoken about that to a certain extent. But explore or investigate. It will be you'll be luckier if you explore or investigate than if you take things at surface value. There's an exchange between the 8th and the 9th lords, which I hadn't noticed before. So the sun and the moon are exchanging signs. My apologies for not mentioning that earlier. But basically, the sun will be, so the ego will be a little bit pushed back. And with moon, the person will be a little bit depressed. The sign will be a little bit depressed for just a little while. That'll shift within about a month's time. Let's see now. Actually, within a few days' time, my apologies. That tendency towards feeling down or feeling hopeless. But it'll become much stronger after mid-August. That feeling of being more in control, more confident, I'll be much stronger after mid-August. So overall, not a bad week for Sagittarius. Good for opportunities for new partnerships, but again, investigate. For Capricorn, this is December 15th. This is January 15th, excuse me, through February 15th. And Rahu's in the 2nd house. and Saturn's in the third house. So again, this is financial growth uh, fed by ambition in this sign. A little bit ruthless, if I'm quite honest about it. So Capricorns won't care about hurting other people's feelings all that much. Um, Venus and Jupiter are in the sixth house, so it'll be a little bit sly about financial processes, but there's a tendency to overconsume if Venus and Jupiter are in the sixth house, and it can actually give visits to the doctor for kidney issues and liver issues. So just be a little careful. There's not a malefic indicator in this particular chart, so it looks pretty harmless to me, but I would get any liver or kidney issues checked out pretty quickly. Mercury's in, Sun and Mercury are in the seventh house. Good time for establishing business relationships, maybe even reestablishing previous business relationships. But again, wait for about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks before signing any paperwork. Mars and K2 are in the ninth house. This is a good placement. This is one of the best placements for this particular sign because it will actually give unexpected financial gains, especially through long-term investments or especially um, from stock unexpectedly rising, especially mineral or oil stock. Um, for those of you who are involved in that. And finally, Mercury is the 10th house lord. Again, investigation before entering any agreements. It's paramount for the sign this month and this week. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Rahu in the first house. So Rahu in the first house can both besmirch, an old king or else one eager to regain the experience it had of control. Okay. So this will be an interesting period for this sign because it'll be torn between wanting to expose the truth about somebody else or reclaim power for itself. Um, that urge to reclaim power will only last for about a year and a half. You'll get sick of it, but if you really feel the urge strongly, I would advise you to go for it because you'll probably regret it if you don't. Um, and let me just get myself a little more comfortable here. Um, you have Moon Mars K2 relationship partner will be sad, a little bit argumentative, a little bit bossy. Um, that that'll be less intense after August 1st. Saturn's in the second house. There's a feeling of lack of money, but the good news is Jupiter and Venus are in the fifth house. It'll enable you to acquire money through creative efforts. People will give things to you that you wanted for a while. Uh, it's actually not a bad combination for this particular rising sign. So Jupiter, although Jupiter and Venus aren't natural friends, it's one of the best combinations for this particular rising sign or sun sign, which is February 15th through March 15th. And one of the things it'll do is it'll increase your houses of wealth, the second house and the 11th house, and combine them with the houses of luck, with the Lord of the houses of luck. That is Taurus, which is the fourth house of status, and Libra, which is the ninth house of luck. So this should actually be a relatively lucky month for Aquarius, Sun, Moon, rising signs, even though Rahu's in the first house. The only problem that Rahu will give you overall is that it will make you uncertain about what you want to do. Everything will look good. Okay, so you'll want to do everything. That's its main problem. So there'll be a tendency to overcommit or to not overspend really so much as overreach. But overall, you'll figure that out. Jupiter's also aspecting the first house, which is good. Mars is aspecting the first house, which is not so good, but it'll stop that aspect by August, before August 1st. So that's actually good. Not a good time for new relationships for this sign, okay? For new, at least romantic relationships or marriage for this particular sign. And that'll continue for the next couple of months. Maybe by end of November, it's clear, but not right now. And let's see now, Saturn is retrograde, so there will be some expenses from the past which will come up. And overall, and Sun and Mercury are in the sixth house, so there may be some conflict or things that are owed to the government which may have to be reconciled this particular over the next couple of weeks. For Pisces, last but certainly not least, Saturn's in the first house, so this makes the sign both um, growth oriented and frustrated. Okay, so Rahu's in the 12th house. There'll be a lot of what I would call activities intended to generate income, which will go towards expenditures. Okay, Venus and Jupiter are in the fourth house. Home life looks pretty good. Sun's in the fifth house with Mercury. Not a bad placement. Mercury retrograde is a little bit disconcerting because you'll have to go back over things with your kids in about 3 weeks. See, you thought were resolved already. Um, and children can become enemies from this combination. Moon Mars K2, again, watch out for liver or stomach problems during this particular subperiod. And overall, Pisces has a lot of activity on this side of the chart. So it's mostly home focused, but career-wise, you should see some improvement because of the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in this particular chart, as Jupiter rules the 10th house of career and the first house of confidence. So this should be a confident month for you. Now, Jupiter goes retrograde shortly. I'll discuss that a little bit more directly with you. Let me just check something out. Hold on a second. Let me give you the exact date. I should have looked this up before. So that'll come in November 12th. So that's a little bit away. Um, so we won't talk about that right away. I'll look for see if there's any other planets going retrograde. A second. So it looks like the next retrograde we have to worry about is really Jupiter, but that's really not until November. So I think I'll leave that discussion for another time. I should have looked this up before I started, but you know me on the fly. Um, and so we will talk about the eclipse next week. Now let's look at the map for time and space changes. Okay, this problem. Let's close it down and then open it up again. All right, so let's see where the planets are right now. Mercury is retrograde over Alaska. There may be some problems with Alaska's. Um, I know the senator from Alaska is having second or has second thoughts about the budget bill, but that's a little bit obscure to bring up here. Sun is close to Hawaii, Jupiter's, so I'm not really expecting anything really bad for this Mercury retrograde. Uh, Being close to Hawaii and Alaska, just some communications problems mainly. Mercury also rules land, so land ownership issues probably continue to be an issue in Alaska. The moon is going through Southern California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington State, and up by Vancouver, up close to Vancouver. Now, there was there's serious talk about Alberta, so we can see a Rahu line going through Alberta, going through or going next to Alberta, Saskatchewan, and I think there was one other province in Canada, um, maybe um, seceding from Canada. So, and again, it's mainly because they don't feel like the central government's paying as much attention to them. Um, and though there were, these aren't official, but there were some polls that indicated that some Canadians feel um, like they might be better off in the United States than in Canada. But again, that's still very speculative at this point. But the but that seems to be where the action is happening here in this particular area right here. And again, I'm not pushing for something. This may fizzle out and just go away ultimately over time, but um, there is increasing dissent in Canada about how the Western provinces are being treated. Uh, there, so Vancouver is a little bit more like Toronto, and but Montreal has always been a little bit dicey about being part of Canada. There were several referenda on it as well. So again, I'm not looking at it necessarily a schism of Canada, but the tensions are there from this map. Um, there are tensions as well in Montana, Idaho, and parts of Oregon and Washington State. There were several months ago, I had read about certain counties in, I believe it was Washington State or Oregon, wanting to secede and join Idaho, which I found fascinating. And basically it's away from the cities. It's away from, like the big cities. They don't feel that represented by them. There's a Rahu line, so we could see some scandals in Montana, Wyoming, Mexico, uh, Western Texas, and down into Mexico, and even some fights uh, or um, disputes going through uh, North Dakota, South Dakota, all the way down to Texas and into Mexico City, as we have this Mars Venus line heading up here. Some potential danger of flooding. Venus tends to do that a lot in Wisconsin, all the way down to Texas, to eastern Texas. And Saturn line. So that's one of the dangers when Venus gets too strong. It brings rains. That's one of the features that it has about it. It brings a lot of rain. So basically, we have a Saturn line going through basically Wisconsin, Illinois, uh, some parts of Mississippi, and down by Mexico into Guatemala. So this could indicate some physical hardships for those parts of the country. There's a Jupiter line running through um, or close to Toronto and Ottawa, and also down through Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina, and touching on Florida. So the Jupiter line, and also right through the Panama Canal, interestingly enough. So there can be some legal fights in those parts of the world, also in Peru and Ecuador. Um, some fights over governance in those areas. Okay, so not surprising, Ohio is also involved, and Pennsylvania is also involved in that. There's a sun line running through Holland, I think it is, and um, Guyana, and into Brazil, and down through Uruguay. Um, there have been some issues that have come up with the Brazilian government about asking people to stay out of their internal affairs, especially in terms of how they control media and things like that. So this will probably be another aspect of this Mercury line coming through here. Greenland is right on the Mercury line. There has been some increased news about Greenland. Greenland is not too happy about. Um, so they want their autonomy, or they don't want to be associated with the United States. You know, uh, so that shows up in the news as well. So, I need to move this line a little bit over here. I need to move this line a little bit. This is a moon line running through Iceland. So could that mean a change in Icelandic government? I don't know. That's interesting. There's a Rahu line. There can be some scandals connected with both Iceland and Ireland, and also some fighting in Ireland, maybe even affecting England because of the Venus line over here. Venus, so this entire belt right here, it looks like there's a lot of controversy over legal matters, and maybe even fighting over legal matters or rights. And this holds true as we get down into Libya and um, into Niger and or Niger and into Nigeria, close to Nigeria. So this is fascinating. There's a Jupiter line running up the west coast all the way into Turkey. So there will be some legal issues in Turkey all the way up through Eastern Europe and Russia. And also there's a descending Venus line running all the way through Italy into um, Eastern Europe, into Poland, into Ukraine, and finally, um, and that's surrounding Ukraine. So this looks fascinating to me because there will be increased pressure to try to resolve the conflict. I won't predict when the conflict will end because I've been embarrassed by that too many times already. I've been overly optimistic about it, so I'm just going to back off. But I'm hoping relatively soon. The astrological indicators are good, but I'm not going to predict that. If um, we go up through Eastern Africa, you see this Sun line and Mercury line intersecting up here, just north of Iran. So there can be some shifts in government in Iran or some shifts in policy in Iran. So that looks interesting. Also, some shifts in policy in Saudi Arabia and even down into the Sudan and even to Yemen. Another part of the world that looks interesting to me right now is there's a moon line running through India. The moon is with it's with a Rahu line, so there can be some disenchantment with local government in India, and even some indications of not rebellion but dissatisfaction or scandal coming up near Bengal or in eastern India, and even some potential for fighting in areas like Bhutan and Ladakh over here. So, and there's a Saturn line coming up. So those parts of the world are in pretty rough shape already. So fighting would not be a good thing. There's also some indication of fighting in what's now called Myanmar. It used to be Burma. And let's see now. There's a Jupiter line coming through roughly Thailand. So Thailand looks like it's in fairly good shape. China's starting to coalesce around a better policy for its people. There's a sun line moving through North Korea and close to South Korea. So South Korea has had a lot of governmental issues lately, as I'm sure you know. Philippines are also affected by that. Philippines have had a lot of governmental issues. So, yeah. And so are certain parts of Australia, although Australia is definitely not unstable. But it's mostly the western part of Australia um, which is having communications issues or dissatisfaction. Finally, we have the moon over here causing some changes to government in Micronesia and maybe in New Zealand. Okay, so there's a Mars line. There could be active violence in New Zealand, although it seems unlikely from what I know about New Zealand, but definitely a lot of dissatisfaction with the government in New Zealand. So that's about it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it greatly. I love you all. If you would do me a favor and subscribe, like, comment, I greatly appreciate it. It would do wonders uh, for me, and it would make me very happy. Um, I didn't do this to get rich and famous, although to be honest with you, I am hoping to monetize this channel eventually if I can. And so you can help me with that. I'd appreciate that. So that's it for me for this week. I appreciate you all. I thank you very much for watching. Please let me know if the broadcast turned out better this week than last week, or if I still need to fix things. And thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. And let me just stop the share and do a proper see you. So until next time, and namaste. God bless you all. And thank you again for watching.